righty, welcome back for another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Friday, January 13th, Friday the 13th. We're here for another episode. We're going to be talking about a couple things. Jackson Arnold is now the National Gatorade Player of the Year. The first time an Oklahoma player has earned that reward, or, not reward, award, excuse me. And then we're going to be talking about Walter Rouse going to Nebraska and the impacts to the Oklahoma offensive line and what that's going to look like next year. A little update on the wide receiver recruiting. And also we're going to be talking what Joe Klatt had to say. You probably could tell by the title of this video. Is Oklahoma the next TCU? Is Oklahoma going to be a playoff team next year? And we have some thoughts about that. So before we get into it, I just want to say we appreciate it. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I think we're like 20-something subscribers away from 5,600. So help us get us there. Hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell on so you know when we post. It's normally every Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9:30 Central, sometimes Sunday. So it always helps to turn on the notification bell. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Jose's a big TikTok guy. Everything's linked in the description below. Leave us a review on Apple and Spotify if you're listening to us on there right now. And for everyone that's been here often and continues to watch, we truly do appreciate it. And it's hard to believe that we're closing in on completing our second full year, beginning of April. We've been doing this for nearly 2 years, and this is a lot bigger than we ever thought it would be. So we definitely appreciate that. So let's get into it. So the first topic, I think the most important one to talk about, is Jackson Arnold. Jackson Arnold is the National Gatorade Player of the Year. Obviously, he was the Texas Gatorade Player of the Year. So he was one of the highest rated guys in the country for a reason. Obviously, according to 247, he is the number 11 recruit overall, I think, or number 7. But he's behind Arch Manning. But I got some news flash. I'm sure a lot of these are Oklahoma fans that are watching us. Jackson Arnold's better than Arch Manning, and it's not even close. I mean, maybe it's close, but I really don't think it's close. Some people might argue that it is. Jackson Arnold put up 3,400, a little over 3,400 yards. I can't talk. 33 passing touchdowns, nearly rushed for 1,000 yards, 24 rushing touchdowns. So a total of 57 touchdowns in his senior season. Ended up winning the National Player of the Year, Texas State Gatorade Player of the Year. What do you think about Jackson Arnold winning this award? It's not overly shocking, but it's kind of shocking to me that Oklahoma has never had a guy that was the Gatorade Player of the Year. For a program as big as Oklahoma is, I just kind of assumed, and I never really realized.
Yeah, I mean, he made history for Oklahoma, so that clearly makes the Jackson Arnold lore just that much greater for those that just really do not like Dylan Gabriel and are ready for a change of the face of the team. But you mentioned it. He's not considered the number one quarterback on 247 and on any service. On Rivals, he was just recently promoted to a 5-star rating. But throughout the year, since last summer, pretty sure he's won every award possible for a quarterback and for a football player, both nationally and in the state of Texas. I'm sure he's probably missed out on a couple, but he won, like you said, he won the National Football Player, Gatorade Football Player of the Year. He won the Texas Gatorade Football Player of the Year. He won Max Prep's Texas Football Player of the Year. He was an Under Armour All-American and a captain for his team. He was Elite 11 MVP, won the Landry Award, which is like the best football player in the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, or Dallas metro area. This dude's literally winning awards left and right and isn't even considered to be a top 2 quarterback. Like if some people wanted to say, well, we're still going to give the edge to Arch Manning, like he's beating out guys like Dante Moore, who I think is very talented, but clearly Jackson Arnold has shown, even in competitions when you're comparing both of them, that he is better. Nico Imaleva, same situation. Guys he's competed against last time, more recently, I guess, in the Elite 11, and did better than most of them. And yet people still, for some reason, aren't as high on him as they are on these other guys. And it really just goes to show that, one, sometimes they're not exactly right. Sometimes they have maybe they're the scouts that are rating are a little bit more local to where these other players are at, not so much Texas. Whatever the situation is, Jackson Arnold. Okay, well, first, congratulations to him, but he's definitely earned the he's earned the position, or at least to be considered the number one quarterback of the 2023 class. And it really shouldn't be an argument. I don't know why recruiting services don't have him higher. I know there's, I think, one or two more updates before the 2023 rankings are like final, and that's where they'll be forever. But it really shouldn't. It shouldn't be this long. This dude has proven that he's, I think the best quarterback, but obviously we're probably a little bit biased. He should at least be considered as one of the two best quarterbacks of the class.
He definitely should be. And as you were talking, I was scrambling and looking for some statistics to back up. I was able to pull up Malachi Nelson's, because obviously that's we would like to compare against Malachi Nelson, once committed to Oklahoma. And there are quarterbacks, like you said, multiple ahead of Jackson Arnold. Arch Manning, Nicholas Amaliva, Dante Moore, Malachi Nelson are all ahead according to 247. I was able to find Malachi Nelson's stats. He threw for nearly 2,900 yards, 35 touchdowns, 4 picks. He ran for 153 yards and scored 2 touchdowns. So he scored 27 total touchdowns, or not 27, 37 total touchdowns. And I believe I said that Jackson Arnold has a total in his senior season this year. He ended up having a total of 57 touchdowns. So 37 to 57. I'm not a rocket scientist or a mathematician, but 57 is a lot more than 37. And the yards, I mean, he accounted for 4,400 yards basically in total yardage, and Malachi accounted for like a little over 3,000. So boom. I mean, and then like Jackson Arnold's obviously winning all the awards. So I don't really see why Jackson is not getting, I guess, the ratings that he should. Is it because he's like 6'1" and not 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 6'5"? I think that'd be kind of goofy that if that was the reason. I mean, because all those guys above him are bigger. But I just think that Jackson Arnold is the best player in in high school football, coming in as a true freshman as far as in the quarterback position. And at the end of the day, this can be a chip on his shoulder. And I think he can use that as a motivation spot, that there's 4 guys ahead of him that not everyone, but all these recruiting sites think are better than him. And and that's what it is. And, also, I want to also look at Jackson Arnold is very mature, and he knows what he's dead set on making Oklahoma, taking it back to new heights and winning a national championship. I'm just glad we got a guy like him that's totally bought in after the whole Jaden Rashada deal with Florida. You just have to appreciate what Jackson's doing as far as like he's locked in.
And we dodged that bullet so hard. And I mean, I remember when Jackson first committed. I mean, he was a high 4-star, but Jaden Rashada was already considered a 5-star at that time. It was a race to which one was going to commit first. Jackson Arnold visited 1 week earlier than Jaden was planned to visit, and he committed on his visit. So really, Jaden didn't get the opportunity. And luckily for Oklahoma, it worked out, because I think they're both very talented quarterbacks, but if you watch the Under Armour All-American game, Jackson Arnold looked way better than Jaden Rashada. Rashada just kind of looked like he was lost out there when it came to actually throwing the ball. And then you're hearing all this stuff about the Florida situation. I get NIL is at this point, it's the opportunity that is awarded to these players for being talented at the high school level. And now schools are not the schools directly, but schools are able to put them in a position to get paid by these collectives. And sometimes I guess the collectives aren't going to ante up the money as promised, and that's when things can get in the position that they are for Florida. It's weird to think that he was almost Oklahoma's quarterback if it wasn't for Jackson being here 1 week earlier. It's literally just a matter of days that separated getting Jackson Arnold from Jaden Rashada being the Sooners quarterback.
And what's crazy is, the national media won't ever link them together. But obviously, if people, watching us and other shows and following recruiting, in my mind, those two quarterbacks will always be linked together, as far as from my perspective and what I'm going to be keeping up with. So far, I mean, it's like, thank the Lord. I don't blame a kid getting money. I totally understand. If I was 17, 18 years old and I had millions of dollars thrown out in front of me, you best believe I probably would have been following the money. I mean, most people probably would, because that's life-changing money when it comes down to it, especially for kids that come from homes that maybe never grew up with money, or even if you grew up with money, millions of dollars is a different level. And I also pulled up Arch Manning's stats as you were talking. I mean, Arch Manning threw for nearly 2,300 yards, 34 touchdowns, 2 picks, ran for 81 yards, 1 touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
I don't know how much else there is to say.
so, like, one thing where I guess you can make the argument, Arch is putting up decent stats, and he really has no one that he's playing with, but he also has no one that he's playing against. That's really like most fans that don't think he should be the number one is kind of their argument for why he shouldn't be number one. Malachi Nelson is at a school where they always have a boatload of talent, and he throws to one 5-star athlete in Makai Lemon, also a guy that OU fans might be familiar with if you've been following us for a while, or at least following recruiting for a while. He was committed to OU at one point. DeAndre Moore, a guy that's also his teammate, probably, he's a high 4-star, kind of in that fringe 5-star area. Probably won't get there, but really talented wide receiver. Once committed to Oklahoma, both his teammates and Jackson Arnold able to put up better stats throwing to, rating wise, what is a less talented receiving core. I mean, I know people really love Landon Sides, and you'll have your feelings on him, but if you want to just go based on stars, Malachi has more talent that he's throwing to and playing with, and put up significantly less yards and touchdowns than Jackson Arnold. Like, that just shows how, I guess, talented Jackson Arnold is, and being able to work within his system and maximize the offense when he's a signal caller.
And the system works for him, and that's the system that he's coming into at Oklahoma, or some variety of it. I'm not saying it's the exact same system, but he's not coming into a program where he is going to learn an entire brand new playbook and have no idea. The system works for him, and it's similar to what Jeff Lebby runs. So the transition should be seamless. I'm not saying day one, but I am just hoping August or early September, whatever it is, of 2024, Jackson Arnold's gonna be ready to roll.
Honestly,
what's up?
Sorry, I was gonna say this entire recruiting class kind of has links to each other, because we'll be comparing Arch Manning and Jackson Arnold for the next 3 or 4 years, because they're playing at rival schools. You've got Malachi and Jackson Arnold. Both, one is the Sooners quarterback, one at one point was committed to Oklahoma before leaving with the coach he wanted to play for. Like you mentioned, Jaden Rashada was days away from potentially being OU signal caller, and we have Jackson Arnold instead. Like, there's plenty of links. The only ones really that aren't linked in this little circle are Nico Imaleva and Dante Moore. And Dante, you could link him against Malachi Nelson because they're playing in LA together. Like, this entire class, I think more than any of the classes that I'm thinking of from the past, they're linked. I guess you can maybe like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields back in the day, because they were the 1 and 2 player in their class and quarterbacks, and they've gone to the NFL together. People kind of compare them and see which one's better. But this class, the quarterback talent's very good and has a lot of links, at least from the Oklahoma standpoint.
Yeah, definitely a lot of links to Oklahoma. So, I mean, I'm just excited that basically they're going to be reporting on campus here any day now. I mean, depending on when they show up to move into the dorms.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Or today.
Or
Today and tomorrow, I think, is when they start reporting, because Makari's dad already posted about how they were at Louis. So they might just be hanging out Norman right now. I don't know if they can move into the dorm.
Yeah, because class starts on Tuesday. So, man, that was the good old days. I remember Tuesday, you always got a 4-day week going back to school. So it was always nice. So,
Oh yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I'm I'm super excited about Jackson Arnold, but I'm more excited just the thought of being able to compare at the collegiate level now because he's been, I hate to say underrated considering he's a 5-star and a top 10, top 15 player according to these ranking sites. I just feel like he's been disrespected as far as the other quarterbacks. And I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, he could be bumped up even more. Like you said, there might be another adjustment or two that 247 and these other sites will do before they're finalized. But still, the amount of stuff that he's won and done speaks for itself. So, do you have any more final thoughts before we move on to the next? All right. So, Oklahoma was recruiting Walter Rouse, and we talked about him a little bit. It really came down to an Oklahoma Nebraska battle. He ultimately chose Nebraska for one reason or another. Obviously, Nebraska is playing the NIL game. Matt Rule has got some funding behind him. It's another one of those programs that, like Texas A&M, where you're just throwing money around because you got to get kids there and get talent there. So obviously, Oklahoma lost out on him. And really, what I kind of wanted to talk about was the fact that so they lose him because he projected to possibly be a starting tackle for Oklahoma, whether it's left or right, just depending on the depth. But now that he's out of the picture, and we don't really know the extent of Jacob Sexton's injury, and someone might be able to correct me, but hypothetically, if it's not good and it's a long-term injury, when you look at the tackle position now, I mean, the depth is so thin because you've lost both Anton Harrison and Wanya Morris, both to the NFL. And then you've got Jacob Sexton, who might or might not be there, or he might come back midseason, or maybe he'll be back and be ready to go for summer ball. I don't know. But in the event that he's not available to go, you've got Aaron Parks and Tyler Guyton. Could a Savion Bird maybe get shifted out there? Maybe, because if I remember right, he came out of high school at Duncanville, and I think he played both guard and tackle at some point in his career. Could a Jake Taylor get shifted out there? What do you think they do? I feel like that they're going to have to identify at least one more tackle in this transfer portal. I mean, there's plenty of transfer portal guys out there. I feel like they're going to have to identify someone, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to, and I think that's what's gonna take priority here for the next few days that they have uh, with transfer portal and making sure that they get to campus soon and be able to enroll for spring. Because in an ideal world, right, they get a tackle here, and someone that can play tackle and is experienced at that position here in the next week or so. They get him to enroll, and he plays summer or spring, summer, and goes right into fall, understanding the system with months under his belt playing at OU, at practice, and again getting acclimated to Norman. If they can't do that, they either have to, like you said, find one of the young guys to go out there and play tackle, and maybe it's shifting Tyler Guyton, someone that's been playing one of the tackle positions at least in practice for over a year now, and getting him to go play. I guess keeping him at right tackle and having someone to get experience in playing left tackle, and you're going to have some inexperience there. Clearly, that would not be the ideal scenario with the younger guy. Having someone that's more experienced would be the best. I mean, and getting a transfer mid semester is still possible, but then that guy wouldn't be able to enroll until the summer. So really, we got a week to find a tackle, and if that's not possible, then I would just hope that one of these guys steps up and plays at a pretty good level at the left tackle position.
I think didn't we talk about it that the window is like what 45 days or something like that? Is that the
Yeah,
window?
so it closes. The last day they can enter the transfer portal is the 18th. Once you enter, there's not like a date you have to exit by,
Yeah.
because at that point it's just depending on school. Now, I don't know how it works. Like, if they don't find a home to enroll in the spring, are they just taking a semester off until they can? Like, that's something I don't quite understand. But if they are still like attending their previous school just as a student, then they're still able to explore their opportunities. Kind of like Jacob Lacey.
Yeah.
He left the team, but was doing the football stuff on his own time.
Yeah, and I guess it could also be, you think about the Caleb Williams deal. I mean, he didn't enroll at USC until really into, I think it was February before he did. And I guess you could always just take 8-week classes and get a full semester that way, with credits anyway. But and I don't want to underestimate, Heath Ozida, Logan Howland, and Caden Green. It's just I feel like they're gonna have to get at least one more person. But if they don't, Caden Green very well might be starting day one if Jacob Sexton, let's say Jacob Sexton is fine and it's just going to be a month or two or whatever it ends up being. I don't know, and he's ready to compete in spring ball. I mean, Caden Green's going to be there tomorrow, moving in or this weekend, and he's already got the size. And I know the jump from high school to this level of college football is extreme, and it's a hard transition. I mean, but he's 6'5", 315, so he has the body type. He might be able to get a bunch of reps without Sexton in the picture. It might give Sexton a run for his money. I'm not saying that Caden Green starts, but if they don't get another transfer, there is a world where that does happen, even if Sexton's healthy.
Yeah, Caden Green does have a road to starting as a true freshman. And I mean, we're going into the spring semester with Sexton hurt. Joshua Bates got hurt during his All-American game, and he'll be out for about a month or two, dealing with his recovery. So you've got two young guys that are hurt that could be pretty important in going into next year, at least, and the two deep, because who's going to back up Andrew Rain next season? That's still a question mark. That's up in the air, and you think it's most likely Bates. Maybe it's someone that's already on campus that we haven't really talked about, but you've got some offensive linemen. Offensive lineman is priority number one. I know that getting another wide receiver has been on the table now for the last few weeks, especially with Marvin Mims leaving, but I feel like the shift, since we didn't get Rouse, Sexton might be hurt for a while, even if it is just through this, just coming back in the summer. That's still long enough where you've got to prepare someone just in case he isn't 100% for the start of the fall.
Yeah, and it made me think, when Oklahoma was building this 23 class, I was like, man, why are they taking so many tackles? And then it kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously that's why that they get paid all the money that they do, and they're the coaches, and I'm not. But it makes total sense that they're bringing in 3 tackles. But you still look, and there is a huge gap as far as playing experience. What's on this roster? What's left? Good thing they've got Caleb Schaefer to come in and compete for a guard position, and maybe Bates backs up Rame, and then if does a. I mean, when you look at it, they are replacing 3 for sure spots of Chris Murray, Guyton, or not Guyton, Morris, and Harrison. They're replacing 60% of their offensive line. Good thing McCade Mettauer's here. You plug in Schaefer or Savion Byrd, and then I guess you let Guyton start, and then potentially either Sexton or Caden Green. And maybe Savion Byrd gets a run somewhere. I don't know, but they're going to be very young and very green at that spot. And I think if they can gel together, this team is going to look really good. It's just a matter of, can they do it?
It's kind of reminding me of Lincoln's last season with the offensive line. There was a lot of like having to test out units, seeing who's going to work better at what position. Hopefully it's not that bad, because it felt like that season they were doing a lot of figuring out through a good portion of the year. And I know injuries probably took a toll on that as well. But man, it was like Conjo and Rame alternated for so long that year. And then Rame finally got the nod, and I think he got hurt. So then Conjo came in. So hopefully this is something that's figured out in the first 3 games of the season, and not having to get into conference play still not knowing who your starting 5 at the offensive line are.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern with this whole offense, or honestly this whole team, because I believe in the defense and I believe in the coaching staff to get this figured out. They've got a lot of more talent on the defensive side now, but this offensive line is what's going to allow this offense to produce. And I am a little nervous. I'm not even worried about Dylan Gabriel. I am just worried about this offensive line. That's why we have Coach B. He'll figure it out, and he'll get them rolling. I mean, he had them playing really well last year, and they looked pretty solid in the Cheez-It Bowl for having such a makeshift offensive line against guys that didn't opt out. I mean, they didn't have any opt outs, and they looked pretty solid. I wouldn't say
Maybe,
perfect.
maybe Parks gets to keep that job on the left side of the line. It's always
Yeah,
possible. He's
he
got
might.
he's got the edge with experience at OU, played during the bowl game, so has some real football, actual game experience. Wouldn't be the craziest thing.
Yeah, Parks might be there, Guyton's there, and then if you can have Parks establish and set himself apart, you at least have some depth, young depth behind every single position. So anyway, definitely something to keep an eye on, and I agree this is a high priority now with Rouse going to Nebraska. Quick update on the wide receiver recruiting. Tyrone Broden was set to announce earlier this week, and he tweeted that he was going to be announcing, and then he came back and tweeted that he's not. He decided to not announce, and that his recruitment is 100% open. So it seems like that Oklahoma and him have parted ways, and probably even Penn State have parted ways. If it's 100% open, those are the only two schools he went to. It seems like that for one reason or another, both schools are looking elsewhere, and he's looking elsewhere. So I wouldn't expect Broden to be a Sooner, but I do think that Oklahoma might try to still take another wide receiver. I don't know. I feel like maybe they don't necessarily have to because they got Andrew Anthony, but and maybe they save that scholarship for a 24 guy that Emmett Jones can offer.
Yeah, and at this point, it's probably just going to be what Emmett sees out in the transfer portal because he did just get the job. He's probably going to need a few days to probably a few weeks, honestly, to evaluate how he wants to start building that room moving forward. Trying to understand what Levy's doing and what he wants to do in the pass game so that he knows the type of receiver he needs to go after.
Yeah, and I like I said earlier on another, I think it was Wednesday show, like we're gonna see a lot of 24 kids get offers, and probably even 25 kids that will a lot of offers will be handed out for the wide receiver room now that they've got their guy. And so anyway, I was excited about Broden, but for one reason or another, decided to part ways. So I mean, having a guy that's 6'7", I thought was gonna be quite fruitful for Oklahoma's offense, but we've already got height. Jaden Gibson will be there. Nick Anderson's there. Stogner, they'll be all good in the receiving area. So the last topic, and Jose pointed this out to me, was Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt today, or yesterday, I guess, put out a podcast talking about just general college football. And one of his segments was, is Oklahoma the next TCU? And he was basically, I'm paraphrasing, that Oklahoma is not at the same level of TCU. Don't get me wrong, before anyone freaks out here. But TCU coming into this season had zero expectations, maybe middle of the pack. I think in our preseason show where we picked the 1 through 10 finishing for the Big 12, I think I had TCU in like at 6 or something like that, right in the middle of the pack, maybe 8-4, 7-5, somewhere in there. And they obviously won a lot of close one possession games. And he pointed out that we've talked about this on the show. Oklahoma lost every single one possession game. Their five of their losses were one possession games. And which is hard to do. It's hard to go 0-5 in those 5 games. And they did it largely because of a tough situation, learning a new system. Talent maybe wasn't quite as there because it was hitting the transfer portal, injuries, various other things. But with Oklahoma having this influx of talent, a year under their belt, veteran leadership at the quarterback position, which that is very important in this next 2023 season, because when you look around in the national landscape, you look at USC's got stability in Caleb Williams, Cam Rising at Utah's there. I mean, when you really start looking, those are like the 2 main ones that jump out to me. I don't know if Quinn Ewers is really going to be the guy at Texas, because Arch Manning might end up being that. There really isn't like a guy that really has started and is coming back. I mean, you got Drake May too from North Carolina, but they're not really going to win to be a national championship competing team. It's going to be open. What do you think?
I agreed with Joel Klatt's take, and if you haven't heard it and want to really get the full context, we're probably not going to quote him word for word. So just go search on YouTube Joel Klatt show, and then put Oklahoma TCU. Probably, if you really want to get really find it and be the first one in your search, it'll be pretty easy to find. Like Brum said, he posted it yesterday, but essentially what he was saying is like you said, OU next season is going to probably come in with pretty low expectations. We're not in anyone's way too early top 25, which is fair. I mean, we went 6-7. And looking at the regular season, losing 4 by one possession or 3 points in some situations, you really just have to clean up those mistakes, be better situationally, and you can pick up 3 of those 4 wins. And in the perfect world, you get all 4 of them, but sometimes it's not going to go your way. Like, that would change the narrative of this team significantly, and probably the narrative of what people think Dylan Gabriel is significantly. Because if we would have just won half of those games, we'd be 8-4 right in the regular season. Like, that sounds way better than 6-6. And people probably not the happiest fans, but significantly better than 6-6.
No, and that's very true. It's literally one possession makes all the difference in the world. And when you look at the Big 12, because obviously Oklahoma is going to still be there next year, you look around. So like a TCU, Max Duggan's going to be gone. You look at Texas. Texas has no stability at quarterback, whether it's Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning. I don't know. Texas Tech played 3 quarterbacks this year that each had over 1,000 yards passing. Oklahoma State is in shambles, and then we can make a whole episode about that. I mean, they just had their defensive coordinator saying that he's going on a sabbatical because I think he's burned out, and they've been losing players left and right. Baylor, they really don't have their guy. I mean, they lost out on Austin Novosad. He went to Oregon. And then you look at Kansas. Yeah, they got Jason Bean and Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels might be the second best, between Daniels and Dylan Gabriel, might be the 2 best quarterbacks this season in the Big 12. I mean, West Virginia is not going to have really a quarterback. Iowa State's going to be in the same boat. So when you look at the Big 12, and then you also bring in, I can't forget, you're bringing in all these other teams as far as BYU, Cincinnati, UNC, or not UNC, UCF, and Houston. You bring in those 4 schools. Houston probably be able to put up some points, but really, Dylan Gabriel is going to be one of the best, if not the best quarterback in the Big 12. And you clean up what they did this year, and you make a few different catches. You don't have a mental mistake and have a fumble. You don't have a penalty like a personal foul penalty go against you. You do a few things, literally like 2 or 3 different plays. You get off the field when you have to on 3rd down. You win those games, and you go. And if you win 10 games, you're playing for a Big 12 title. You win 11 of those games, you play for a Big 12 title, and you might be able to go to the playoffs. And you look around in the rest of the national college landscape, there's no real quarterback outside of a handful of Caleb Williams and Drake May. But you look at Georgia, you look at Alabama, you look at Ohio State, Clemson, they all have new guys coming in. I mean, LSU, I guess technically, probably has one of the most experienced and best quarterbacks in the SEC at LSU. It's open. It's open in the Big 12, and it's open in the national landscape.
Yeah. Sorry I had to leave there. There was some dogs scratching out there, and I had to go take care of it. Luckily, I have my AirPods in, so I heard most of what you said. And yeah, with the Big 12, to me, it seems pretty obvious that Oklahoma is in a position, especially with the quarterback, that you have experience, veteran leadership, experience on the field, that he should at least be competing for the best quarterback in the conference, which, if that is what happens, and you would assume that you're probably a pretty good team, hopefully a 10-win plus team. And like you said, competing for the Big 12, and if you are an 11-win team, you're probably competing for a playoff berth. and that's a significant jump. Now, when we've talked about Dylan Gabriel in the past, like I mentioned, you have to, sometimes it's just a matter of, 1 year under their belt. He just came back from an injury. Last year was his first year in 2 years playing a full season. He got his legs underneath him. He's got the rust off. Now it's time for next year to take a jump and get this team to hopefully the promised land, at least the playoffs. Like, or even at this point, I think a successful season for Oklahoma next year. This year, I said at the beginning of the year, is just seeing small incremental growth and improvement throughout the year. And I think we saw that with the defense. Were they perfect? No, but they did improve little bits every week, especially after the bye week. Next year, it's going to be more so dependent on their record. Can you win these close games? Can you, get up to 10 wins? I think that's got to be the minimum. The minimum for a goal. Like you can't be hoping that you might pull out 8 or 9 wins when you play at Oklahoma. You've got to be aiming for 10 plus every year so that you're competing for the conference and hopefully competing for a playoff berth. I think it's really going to be dependent on the offensive line. How's that look? And how much can the defense improve? Because we are probably going to see a decent amount of new faces there next year. I mean, we've got Woody coming back. Danny Stutzman's probably going to get his job back. How's the defensive line unit going to look? That might look pretty different than it did last year, especially with the departures of guys. Safeties, who's going to play safeties? Who are going to be the other linebackers? We probably Stutzman. We all assumed Hassan McCullough would be the cheetah or one of the linebackers. And who's going to be the guy next to them? Is it going to be Jaron Kanik? Is it going to be Kip Lewis? Will Kobe McKenzie get time and step in as a starter? These are all things that we're going to need to get answered, but it's ultimately the improvement on the defense and their performance, because you can't be the 120 something ranked defense again and hope and think that you're going to win 10 games and be competing for anything significant.
No, you need complementary football. And I will say, I think LSU is a dark horse next year as far as for winning a national title. If Jaden Daniels takes that next step, I really think they're positioned well. But anyway, I do agree. I think the bare minimum is you're shooting for 10 plus wins. I wouldn't be totally upset if they went 9-3 and then won a bowl game and went 10-3 overall. If assuming that they don't play for a Big 12 title in that scenario, I think that would be good. But this team will win a lot more games. They'll win. They won't go 6-7 next year. And if they do, that's when we might start questioning. The talent is going to be a lot better on both sides of the ball now, and especially on the defense, and they're going to figure it out. So I think it's very possible that OU is the next TCU, but I don't know. I wouldn't bet on OU going to the playoffs and even winning a playoff game to get to a national title. I wouldn't put money on that, but there is a world where it does happen, where maybe they sneak into the playoffs as the 4th seed and maybe lose in the first round in preparation going in the SEC potentially in 24, and then competing in that conference at an extremely high level for one of the 12 playoff spots, which that's even cooler. I'm really excited about that. I don't want to wish the 23 season away, but I think that's going to be so cool, and potentially having some home playoff games. Could you imagine OU and Norman having a home playoff game one year?
I will be in attendance when that happens, because that sounds like an experience and an environment that you would not want to miss.
I mean, every game is important in college, but when you pack that on with the playoff atmosphere in the very first playoff game in Norman, that's going to be an atmosphere that I have to be a part of too. I mean, that is going to be a cool game, and hopefully that's in 24. I think it's very possible that it happens, and you've got Jackson Arnold doing it.
Assuming that we're in the SEC, the SEC is probably going to take up half of the playoff spots, because I'm assuming that after the first 4, it's still going to be a committee-based vote. I mean, they always favor SEC schools. You're probably going to see the two competing in the SEC championship for sure getting in, and then probably two or three other schools, depending on the year, taking spots in the playoffs. Like the Big Ten outside of Michigan and Ohio State sucks. Penn State's pretty good, so I guess they might get a spot, assuming that they're consistently 10-win team.
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you see Josh Heupel go on Bussin' with the Boys?
I haven't seen the full episode, but I've seen clips of it.
Yeah, did you see the clip where they asked what's your ideal playoff scenario for football? And he said, well, you just put the top four teams from the SEC and let them play. And I think it's pretty funny, but it's only funny because it's kind of true. I mean, at the end of the day, who's winning national titles left and right? It's the SEC.
Yeah, and I think that just shows how there is some credit to frustrated Ohio State fans saying that Ryan Day is working the program backwards outside of losing to Michigan 2 years in a row. He gets all the talent in the world over there, both sides of the ball, not just offensive players. He does get a lot of wide receivers, some of the best wide receivers in recruiting classes, but they get defensive linemen all the time, and they can't. They get defensive backs too, and they just haven't been able to get to the natty, which shows how hard it is. But there's got to be something there with coaching because he's got the talent.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's got all the talent in the world up there. I mean, when you have Larry Johnson coaching those guys along the defensive line, you look at the Chase Young, the Bosa brothers. I mean, they've had some great ones come through there. So, yeah, so I'm curious to see what people have to say about this topic. I'm sure there's some thoughts, but do you have any final overall thoughts on anything?
Nope. I guess we'll do an end of video. What's um what do you guys think about OU basketball so far? I think they've been really up and down. I went to the Texas game, saw the last bit of the Kansas game, seen bits and pieces of other games. Really seems like the problem is they just don't know how to close. They they can put up leads, they can put up a fight with any team in the country, but just can't finish the game.
And the Big 12 is the best basketball conference out there, and they are playing against some of the best teams, and they're hanging in there. I mean, they're right there. Just couldn't pull it off in Lawrence. I thought that night, what was it, Tuesday night? I think it was, or Wednesday. I can't remember. I thought that was the day. I thought that was going to happen for the first time in nearly 30 years. But
Bad transition defense at the end. Couldn't make a bucket. Like they couldn't buy a bucket.
everything went south. And then also, I mean, it doesn't help that the refs, they had 17 more free throws and they were in the game because of it. So, but anyway, you made it this far. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. Remember, we're only like 20 something subscribers away from 5,600. So help us get us there. Hit the subscribe button and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. If you're listening to us on Apple or Spotify, leave us a review on there. It helps us out a lot. And we will catch you guys on Monday.